Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Tab Sleeve Glover, and today we're going to be doing another abstract painting, but this time we're going to keep it simple. I'm going to show you how to make a more simple composition and lay in colors the same, but keep the shapes simple and maybe include more negative space, but we'll see how it evolves. But I'm going to try and keep it simple. I know sometimes I get out of control. I like to add all the little colors and the circles and the shapes, but this is the canvas I prepped. Now, if you've seen other videos, we just prep this with the modeling paste. You can see the texture underneath, and then I take some leftover paint and I paint over the top to give it a base layer. And you can see how most of the colors are grays, but then I scraped on some of these intense colors just to show you how the grays will help accentuate those colors. So if you're not incorporating grays into your compositions, in your color palette, then maybe try that out and see how the colors start to harmonize. I've also got these. I made a couple more just to show you, they don't have to be perfect. And a lot of, if you're a painter and you might have heard the term mud, like when you mix all your colors, you can start to get mud. And I see a lot of, like, this is what mud can look like on your palette, and it's just gray. It's just a medium gray like this, see? But you can add colors to tint the gray. So whenever you scrape off your palette, you can save some of that paint to do this base layer, and then you can just tint it with a little color and save you some money on that paint. So none of your paint should go to waste if you're using this type of stuff, this base layer technique. So let's get into it. I'll show you the palette, and I'll list the main colors of the tubes that I buy for the colors, but I mix most of them with white, and I try to have about 2 different shades of that color on the palette. But the reds, you can definitely see there's more. This is the flesh colored pink, but I add white to that. This is red, not straight out of the tube. I add white to the red, so it's a little lighter, and then I make a pink, and then this is alizarin crimson with white. That's a more intense red. Then we've got the orange mixed, a creamsicle orange here. This is the water right here, the aqua bluish greenish water, and I've got 3 values of that. Try and have color variation in your paintings. That's gonna add a lot to the color balance. So I've got a darker green, a lighter green, yellow green, and then an intense teal green. These are reddish purples and bluish purples. And then I also included all these grays just to try and add more depth. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, I want to play around with these grays here, especially because I'm trying to keep this composition simple. So maybe the grays will help create a little depth and keep things simple, and we can just have maybe a couple focal points. But let's get into it. I'm going to show you the brushes. So these are the brushes I might be using. Not all of them, but maybe all of them. We'll see how it works out. But since this is a smaller painting, plus I want to keep it simple, I might only use half of these and stick with some of the smaller ones. So smaller canvas, use smaller brushes to create smaller shapes, and that way it's not so congested. But let me see, I also have that smaller palette knife. So right now we're just going to start by scraping on the blue on the top of this base layer. Keep some of it revealed if we want, and see how it works out, and then we'll add the composition techniques and scratch those into the surface like last time. I'm just going to take this blue, and if you see any areas on your base layer that you've created that you want to keep, try and keep those. Right now I really like this area, but I think it's going to be too dark, but that was way too much. So I'm just adding a little bit on here. I got such a big pile. Scrape it on there. So I think this is going to be too dark, but if I scrape over it, maybe we'll get something nice. Also here, the red coming through there, that's nice. But we'll see how it works out. This is just the first step. Cover up the base layer, see what's revealed, and you can add a vignette. When we do the composition techniques, I'll add that list to the screen. Oops, that was supposed to be blue. I'll add the, I'll just use it. I'll add the list of composition techniques to the screen so you can see that. But vignette is one of the things. It's basically, I call it edge flicker, but it's basically referring to high contrast near the edge. We want the eyes to stay inside of the composition and not wander out and get distracted by high contrast around the edge. So that's why we're creating a vignette and keeping our eye on edge flicker. Make sure there's no high contrast. This looks almost good enough. I'm gonna add a little bit of this lighter purple, the bluish purple in the corners here, and I'm gonna finger smudge some of it, and then just dip my finger in that, come over here and do that on this side. I'm gonna make sure all the white's covered up of the canvas. Real fun way to, you know, fill in the white spots on your canvas. See, I like how the finger smudge looks right here, so I'll probably keep that area. So this is the light paint going into the dark paint, finger smudging into that, and we're getting some depth, like a smoky, that's called aerial perspective, but we'll cover that later. Let's just keep adding this, and I'm gonna dip my finger in a little green, maybe add it to the side here, and automatically we're creating these type of gray colors. It's like the green mixing with the purples, creating a little grayish colors, and that's gonna make the normal colors. These are just basically normal colors with a little white added, but when they're next to that gray, oh boy, they like to sing. This is starting to look good, and I'll add a little bit of this yellow green, some finger rubs, see what we get. So right now, once you get your layers scraped on, want to keep an eye on any areas that you want to make sure you include in the final composition. But let me add the water base coat real quick. We're gonna have the horizon line about right here. Also, if you haven't noticed, most of the paintings I've done so far are horizontal, but since this is hopefully a minimal composition, more negative space, I think it would look better if this subject kind of centered and then less negative space. So if it was horizontal and we had the subject centered, we'd have a lot of negative space on the left and right, and it might not be as balanced, but you could definitely make it work. Just wanted to try a vertical canvas for you guys. So let's start brushing in some of these areas, and I like this little lip here, so I'll try and keep that, see what else evolves. Like when you add paint to your brush and you lightly scrape over the top of the surface, if it's dry, you can see the textures you're creating there. So sometimes that's nice. You can scratch into it if you want. Just make little textures. I like the red under there, so we'll see if we can scratch into that. If I leave too much of the underpainting showing, then we'll start getting distractions. So I want to cover up most of it. Just keep some of the areas that you want to accentuate. Scratch over that with the palette knife. Let's see. See how the red's coming through? That looks pretty cool. And this layer right here, how it's being applied softly with the brush stroke, you know, all of this is going to make the next layer be more in focus, because we're just going to apply it with the brush. You can see how that's creating a nice brush stroke there. All right, keep rubbing, brushing and rubbing. I like this little textured area there, so to make that stand out more, I can just cover up some of these areas. That area. All right, if you want, you can squint. You can see if there's any significant contrast you want to get rid of, and if there is significant contrast, you can always balance it. So like when I'm squinting, I see this is standing out and then there's no balance over here. So that could be done with scratches, or you can add a flower here or whatever, shapes, but I'll probably just balance it as we go. Getting a mess here. Let me wipe some of this stuff off. That's why I wear gloves. I just get out of control here. Too much paint going on. It's all over the handle and everything. So what happens when you paint with your fingers and the brushes and the palette knives? It's a nice, beautiful mess. All right, so this area here, the horizon line, we want that to be soft as well, because it's gonna fade up. If you look at the ocean, like a nice misty day or foggy day, you'll see that it blends into the sky, and it's nice depth. So that's what we wanna recreate here. So we want that horizon line nice and soft. So I'm just gonna brush this in. I'm gonna use the palette knife. I could probably scrape some areas, see if we get something cool. Finger rub. See how I'm using revealing the canvas there? I like that for now. The base layer. I like that for now. We'll see how it evolves. And you can wipe off. Make sure you wipe off if you think you're contaminating any areas you want to keep blue or green or a pure color. So like this, I'll wipe off because it was getting too much green on there. And I can just do one swipe down and wipe off again. You can see how it keeps that color there. That's the trick to alla prima. You gotta always keep a clean brush and use fresh paint. You can keep these from mixing too much. I'm just gonna brush this in here. Maybe do a little finger rubbing. These corners here. Could probably add some purple. So that's good there, nice and soft. And then I'll finish this area here. Let me maybe add some grayish pink in that area. That's kind of cool. And let's go back to the palette knife and scratch into this just to try and blend it, create some interest. If you have a hard time seeing if it's blending into the horizon line there, just squint your eyes. Right here. Up here is a high contrast area. Just try and make it look unique, you know? Scratch into it, scrape over it. I'm squinting. Looks pretty good for now. So let's finish. Let me finish painting in these little areas that I don't want to have revealed. That's good. In this area, that looks good. I like that. This, I want to probably just brush over it with a clean brush. Get some blue going on. That looks good. All right, now we got to do the design process. Let's do that. So for the design process, I'm just going to use the end of this small brush, and I'm going to first draw the dynamic symmetry grid. I would say you could keep it even simpler and not draw the dynamic symmetry grid, but this is important for our structure, and a lot of techniques will be promoted by the grid. Not that we have to use the whole grid, just I like to draw it on there, and it's a great tool to always use. So I'm just gonna go corner to corner. That's the major diagonals, and I'm gonna skip over any areas that I want to keep, like this whole finger rubbing area. I want to keep that, and then this area and this area. So I skipped over that, got one diagonal. Let's go over this way. I like this area here, so I'm just gonna skip over that. And it doesn't have to be exact, just make it close enough. I like this area, so I'm gonna skip over that and then come all the way down and keep all this stuff. All right, now the reciprocal diagonals, remember those, you have to create a T. So you take the major diagonal and you create a T. So you just go across that at 90 degrees, and let me run it this way. So I just line up the diagonal here to this diagonal, make a T, and then run this up, and then run it down. Keep any areas I want to have in the final composition, and finish it. So now you got that reciprocal, you can parallel it. So take that same diagonal, parallel it, and then make that T here. So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna keep this area, just gonna run down here, and there's my T, and then keep this area here close enough. And if you make a mistake, you just rub out if you want to clean a line or whatever. Now let's do it to this side. Use this corner, make a T, and keep the areas that you want to keep. So this goes up here. Sometimes these scratches in here look really nice, like this. I like that dark green under the blue, so I'll probably keep that if it's not too distracting. We'll see. But parallel this and then finish the last one. Gonna go across here, make the T. All right, there's our grid. Now what we want to do is draw the triangle, and in this case I just want one triangle. And since we're looking at what we already appreciate in the painting so far, and so far I'm appreciating this area. I like this area, and it's already got a diagonal that's paralleling this major diagonal. And we have this area, but we can just make a triangle like this and have the other point right here, and then have it come across the bottom of this area that I like. So we'll draw that in. This is already, just make it parallel, that diagonal. And then over here we can parallel this diagonal. See how that looks. And we want it kind of centered. So if you need to, you can create that vertical center line. That's the fulcrum of the composition. That's what we're gonna base our balance off of. So anytime you add interest to your canvas or any photos or anything, you always should be playing the balance like a teeter-totter back and forth from that vertical center line. So if you have your subject, like if you're using rule of thirds, like they teach you in every single book in school, which is bad by the way, you put your subject, hey, I'm doing it just like I learned in the book, and you put a subject right on the third. You don't have anything else over here unless you're lucky and you accidentally capture something, whatever, over here. But all of a sudden you have this imbalanced composition and you have all this negative space on the right side, so you have a bad composition and it looks really generic. So stay away from rule of thirds and always be balancing from that vertical center line. So we've got our triangle. Now let's do a 90-degree angle, and we're going to keep it simple. Just going to do, probably look for areas you want to add interest, and I want to add interest over here in these areas, probably just a little bit of interest, not a lot. So this already has a 90-degree angle going, coinciding with this edge of the triangle. And remember, a coincidence that is just any edge that meets another edge on a linear path. So if we're actually creating our triangle with shapes, just like a dotted line, that's a coincidence. But in this case, it's actually creating a geometric shape. So we call it an enclosure. So it's actually using the coincidences as well. But if that sounds confusing, check out other videos or message me in the comments below and I'll explain it further in another video. But let's do one more 90-degree angle and let's add some interest down here in this area. So we've already got the reciprocal here and we've got the triangle here, so let's just keep that as it is. And there's our 90-degree angles. So see why I like the grid? It promotes these techniques. So we've got our 90-degree angles, we've got our triangle. Now let's do the arabesque, and we're going to keep this simple as well. Sometimes I like to go all around the composition, but we're going to primarily have most of the interest here on the triangle. We want to incorporate an arabesque that will come down here into the ocean and hopefully unite the ocean as well. So arabesque is like the glue. That's the glue of the composition. We're going to pretend we're a race car driver and just drive around and connect these lines and make them swoop around and be united with each other. So let me go down this 90-degree angle here to the edge of this triangle. And then we're going to go around. I don't want to mess that area up, so I'm just going to swoop around this area. And we're going to go, let's go around the triangle. That's the most important part. And then we want to circle back around to try and come down here. So I'm going to go up to the tip of the triangle, hit this reciprocal here. We're circling around here. And okay, we're going to come down right here. We're going to go down this major diagonal and then down this major diagonal. And now we're heading towards the water. I'm just going to circle around here and maybe up around this. And we'll circle back around to this area here, and that'll be good. There we go. And we got a nice little complete loop, and I could probably complete it if I wanted to. Let me just do that just in case. So we're looping around and coming back down here to the triangle. So that'll direct movement to this area as well. That looks good. Now that we have the arabesque done, let's just complete some of these ellipses that we see. So here's one, this is one. We've got one here, we've got one down here. I don't want to mess this area up, so I'm trying to just skip over it. That's one, and that's good. Now let's do gamut. Gamut is repeating diagonals, and we already have some promoted by the grid, but let's do like maybe two more. We'll do one here, since we already have that movement going down. We'll just make sure it's emphasized that way. And then one right here, maybe pointing to the center of this, and just run it down, parallel the triangle. That's good with that one. And we already have our coincidences, and we can work those with shapes as we develop the composition. But for now, I think we're ready to start laying in shapes. I've got this angled brush. Doesn't matter which brush you use. Just gonna start with the tip of the triangle and then work my way around the triangle. Keep the shapes simple. And remember, red is gonna direct a lot of attention. It's gonna draw a lot of attention, just like contrast is. So if we deliberately choose where we're putting our colors, we can create more movement depending on where we add the contrast in the colors. So say for instance, your whole composition doesn't have any red in it except for down here or down here, your viewers, their eyes are going to be drawn down here unless you properly balance it on this side as well. So just got to pay attention to how our eyes are drawn to intense colors and as well as red, and like this orange is pretty intense, so is that blue. But we'll try and balance it left to right, and that's why I'm just trying to play it with the center, create a center composition, use a vertical center line and balance it from left to right. So we'll start with this grayish pink. Always like the grayish pink, and it's gonna really accentuate the intensity of the red. So this is the tip of that triangle, so I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna try and keep this area, but I'm gonna add the colors around it. We'll see how it evolves. Nothing's pre-planned or anything, we're just winging it and going with what we already know, our knowledge. Some people talk about using their gut instinct or intuition, but anything you know or apply has to come from quality knowledge. So you're not born with the ability to combine colors. You have to learn that through trial and error, or you learn through a magazine or something like that, but you have to learn it. So when I say I'm not using my gut instinct, I'm using my knowledge of what I've learned. This is not winging it. Instinct is something you're born with. So say you're a little baby and you cry, You don't know why you're crying, but you're uncomfortable, and all of a sudden you get fed milk and now you're not uncomfortable. So you learn to cry when you're uncomfortable, and maybe you get fed or you get your diaper changed or whatever. This is really the basics of instinct. You're not taught to cry when you're a baby. You just do it. So if you're telling someone you're creating from intuition, that's the basics and not including any knowledge or intellect or anything. So why would you tell someone you're creating from intuition? And that's basically saying I'm creating with zero knowledge at all. Not the correct way to do it. You're always using your knowledge or past experience. So that is definitely my own opinion, but makes sense to me. So I'm gonna soften this out. Let me just use this bigger brush here and make it soft. And we're keeping track of the design. You can use your fingers. And I'm keeping track of this 90-degree angle and the triangle, and I'm leaving this area free. And this is the gamut. I'm gonna soften this. So the softer you make it, the more depth you're gonna create, because any shapes you put on top of it, it's gonna be more in focus. So we're trying to create depth here. So that's why I'm softening it. All right. So let's do Colorado red flower with the orange center. This is a new brush, so it's nice and soft. So let me add, let's do a circle, and we'll try and include this tip here. Make sure it's got a lot of paint on there. Don't try and overcorrect your brush marks. Just if you need to, ghost in your brush marks to get that movement down, and then just leave it. That way you're not over fixing and over messing around with it. If you do it quick, it adds nice expressionism to it. So now I'll add that dollop of orange in the center. We're gonna use the more intense orange, and probably that might be too intense, so I'll cool that down with some of this creamsicle orange, just a little bit, and use this little palette knife and just dab it in the center there. That looks good. Remember, we like to add our little leaves around the flowers, so we can use this green and maybe align it to that reciprocal and then the edge of the triangle, and make sure they're varied, maybe color variation and also the shape. There we go. So that's enhancing that ellipse there. And I'll do one more on this side. Looks good so far. Now let's go with some pink. Pink always looks good on this grayish. And let's add some to this 90-degree angle and this over here. So far so good. Keeping it nice and simple. Try and include this negative space. Let's keep working around this triangle. And we want to keep that simple. Let's go with, I'm gonna go with a little bit of this yellow-green right on the left tip there. I'm gonna blend that out over here to this arabesque, and then some lighter green, blend that into the yellow green, and then lead it up to this arabesque, kind of soften it. Let me add, I'll add a green circle, a dark green circle. I'm gonna take that palette knife again, the small one. I'm gonna add, this is the more intense yellow. It's not too intense, but it's more intense than this one. This is more pale. So I'll take the more intense one, just add it right on the tip there, and I'll dab it right in the center of that green. And if it's not the way you like it, you can always use another dab or use a softer, like a longer brush that'll apply the paint to thick paint. Now I'm gonna just grab this. This might be too intense. Let's see. Let me soften that up just a touch with some more white, some lighter blue actually. And we're gonna add this to the yellow green. Same palette knife, dab it on there, right inside of it. Try and go for size variation, hierarchy. Like if you're ordering a Coke, they have small, medium, large Cokes. Think of that with brush strokes as well, or sizes or shapes. Small, medium, large, get some nice variation. Now, since this is in there, it looks a little straight, so I'm gonna soften this. Maybe make it come down this arabesque here and soften that. So by using these softer, subtle shades, we can add interest, but we can also keep it simple. That looks fine. Now let's complete the triangle. Let me just add this lighter bluish purple. And since we have most of the tips, see how we have the tip there kind of encompassed? This tip is definitely encompassed. So let's go around the tip on this just to mix it up so it hides the design a little bit better. So we're gonna go on the bottom of the triangle and then maybe up this arabesque. We're gonna make this area like a softer purplish blue, and we'll go all the way to the tip, but we're not, see how we're not inside the triangle? So that'll help us hide this triangle a little bit better. We'll keep blending this in, making it soft. Use my fingers and go up this. Just the most subtle shade can help redirect our attention. So keep that in mind. It doesn't always have to be a high contrast mark. Now let's add a little bit of this red, and I want to keep that tip intact, but I don't want to draw too much attention to it. So I'm going to do this. We'll do that, and then I'll just add a little red dot here. Since I have that triangle located and painted, and I'm going to erase some of these construction lines as I go. There we go. Let me surround this with white, maybe just a part of it. It looks fine. And let's add some white dots. So we've got that right edge of the triangle being held together with this dollop right here, and then that dollop of red. Now let's go up these sides of the triangle. Let's try and incorporate that, but let's keep it subtle. Maybe I can add a little bit of this grayish blue perhaps. Let's try that. And then we'll swing it up to this ellipse and arabesque. Just do this here. Real subtle. Maybe blend those two together. A little more purple. Just blending it. I'm gonna use a different brush. Let's use the filbert and just get some nice brush work going. Nice and sloppy. Okay, now since we have that blue, it's a grayish blue, so anything we put on top is gonna be more intense. Well, any of these colors, so could do orange and then surround that with white. So let's try that. So with complementary colors, they look better not next to each other, depending on the contrast. If you're doing complementary colors right next to each other, you always got to look at the contrast. And if the contrast isn't significant enough, they're going to kind of clash together. So it's best to separate them by neutrals if you're not sure how to control them with the contrast. So let me add some white here. This is our neutral. I'm going to add a little circle of white, and I don't want it that messed up. I want it thicker, so I'll add a nice thick. There we go. It's gonna be sloppy looking. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but I wanted more white around there because there was too much grayish blue showing through. So now I'm going to use this again. If you don't have one of these, I'll show you how to apply it with a brush. So let me just grab this brush. It can be any brush. Now let me add, this is the paler orange, the creamsicle orange is what I call it. It's just add a nice little dollop on there. I'm going to dab it right in the center. There you go. And it's kind of poking up here, but let me smudge it down just a bit. See that? How that orange is intensified because we've got the gray around there. Looks really nice. Even though it's a pale orange, it's still popping out and looking good. So let's see what else we can do. Let me add just a couple dots of maybe this reddish purple. See how that looks? I'm trying to keep the size small so we can keep this like a simple composition and still show hierarchy. So that looks good. And then we're gonna add our green as well. We're gonna add some of these down here and maybe on this. Why not? While we've got it, we're gonna add some here. The reddish purple looks really good on the yellow green. And I added it right on that reciprocal, but I'm gonna spread it out a little. So now we're adding interest to the left and the right side, but it's not distracting and drawing too much attention. So we're still keeping that negative space, keeping it more simple. All right, now this could add a little bit more here. And let me add those green, the little leaves. You can use different brushes for the leaves. Like right now I'm looking for that long brush, but I can always just use a different brush for the leaves. So like this, I have a flat brush. So I'm gonna add that, and that'll give us some nice variation as well. So I'll just add it on this arabesque, and then maybe one on this reciprocal. And over here, that looks good. Okie doke. Now let's keep moving around. Let's fill in this left side here, this left side of the triangle. And I'm gonna use the same brush, and I'm gonna add a little bit of red here. And I'm gonna add some red on this edge. I'm probably gonna just smudge it. There we go. Now let's keep going on this side. Let's try this. I'm gonna do this yellow. This is actually, yeah, let me try this. This is the grayish yellow. I'm gonna fill in this area here. Probably just a little too dark. Let me add some white to this. I'm gonna fill in this area here, up to the edge of that triangle. A little bit more. Smudge it, smudgy, smudgy. Maybe carry it all the way up through that 90-degree angle here. Okay, that's the grayish yellow. Now we know the colors we put on top is going to be more vibrant. So let's try and, I'm going to try and connect these grays just a little bit, and then offset that edge so it's not as obvious. And I'm gonna do this orange. And I'm gonna surround this with white. Let's see how this looks. This is an experiment, but just going with our knowledge of colors, not our gut, remember. There's that. And then let's add I'm just gonna add an orange dollop in the center, but maybe I'll do a red. Let me see here. Let me add a red dollop in the center, if I can reach it. Good, there we go. That looks good. Just blending in that yellow. Now maybe if we add some yellow marks to the side, it would be even more accentuated because of that grayish yellow. It's a dry brush still, let me see. There we go, that looks good. Now let me add some yellow. We're going from the vertical center line, balancing the colors as well. So this side, this entire side doesn't have any yellow. We have all this yellow here. So let me add, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots of yellow. You don't have to be exact, but you can mix it up, like say, take all that yellow and squish it into a ball. How much does that ball equal? And we can make it equal on this side, but just different size variations. So let me experiment with that. Where do I want to put this? Let's see, I want to put one right here, and then I'll just do a bigger one over here. Let's do, this is the major diagonal. This is going towards that center of the ellipse, so I'm going to do it right here. Okay, so I'm trying to show you that we've got equal amounts of yellow on each side. It's just different amounts in different places, so asymmetrical, it's not exact. I'm going to surround this with white. Where is, in some cases you do need to use this long brush. It's just easier to apply the paint on wet paint. Comes off the brush easier because it's a softer brush. Maybe I'll add an orange center as well. Let's see how that looks. Complete this real quick. There we go. Let's see, do I want an orange center? Let me, a little bit on the palette knife. And the way I usually color test is if I just hover over the color, close one eye, hover over it, and see if it looks good. And in this case it does, so I'll add it. There I go. Let me add the green marks, and I'm encompassing or including that gamut right there. Okay, we're on the verge of finishing the big shapes because I don't want it to get too busy and too out of control. Keep this simple for you guys. So I want to make sure we balance from left to right. So I'm squinting and looking at the shapes from left to right, and it's looking good so far. We need something in this area here. So whether that's a subtle shape or a subtle grayish tone, doesn't matter, just as long as we have something. So let me try a little bit of this grayish pink, and I'll add some dots of red in there. And maybe a yellow. No, let's go pink. I don't have enough pink yet. Let's start adding some pink. This is the alizarin crimson mixed with white. Do this up here. Nice. And then I'm just gonna turn the brush. See, I got the brush kind of dirty with that purple, but I can turn the brush and use the rest of that paint on there. So let's use that maybe right over here. That looks good. Add some pink dots around this. Use a different brush. Just add some up here. And then balance it from left to right. So we're gonna go over here. I'm gonna add a little pink by these purple dots here, and by these. And then you can scratch or whatever, make it interesting. Let's encompass this ellipse here. So I'm just add a little bit of blue, and I'm gonna squiggle on the edge of that ellipse and keep it balanced. So let's squiggle over here, maybe finger smudge. And then let's see, this isn't complete here. I'm gonna add something else to that blue to make it look better. And I'm gonna rub out these construction lines real quick. That ellipse is pretty much done. All right, now what we can do to make that blue look better, let's add some color around it. So what would look good? Let's add some white, just a little white, okay? You can see how it's bringing it, making it sing a little bit better with that neutral. Okay, and let's add a little bit of pink here. If you're in doubt, you can just hover over that area and see where it looks best. It's gonna look good on this purple. Over here. Okay, and then I'm gonna add just a couple small red dots nearby. Just a couple, I don't wanna get too busy. Let me find the smallest brush here. Add a couple red dots here, a couple here, and then maybe, there you go. All right, I'm gonna blend this in a little bit better. And then this area here, make that look better, like push it in more or something. I'm gonna add some white in there. And then let's see, we've got this yellow, this teal green that we haven't used yet. So let's see, I'm trying to think of what would be good on that grayish yellow. So let's just add some white. All right, now let's see where this fits in. Sometimes the teal green can create some problems, but we'll figure it out. If we make a mistake, we'll just cover it up or scrape it off, whatever. So let me just scrape a little bit on the brush, and I'm gonna hover over the areas, see what might look best. I don't want it to be too distracting. So let's see, still looking. Like right around this dark purple, it seems to look really nice with the red there. So this area right here, just add a couple dollops. And then we'll do a couple on the other side. Use a different brush. Okay, go up here. Let's see, hovering. What will look good? Maybe this up here, maybe. Let me smush it out a little bit. And maybe just a dollop somewhere else. Maybe down here. That's good. Let's scrub some of this out. And then add a little white nearby. Some white by this. Make sure I like it thicker there. That's good. Now let's see what we're working with. We're gonna have to move to the water pretty soon and then erase the construction lines. So let's do that. Let me do the water next. We're gonna keep the water simple as well. Let's get this water going. And since we have this airbest coming down here, we want to try and keep that intact. So we can do that with value or color. So I'm gonna try them both. Take that palette knife, add a little bit there, and then I'm gonna add some of this. Let's do the bluish purple. You just want to scrape your palette knife real flat onto the paint, and then you can scrape it like that. Scratch into it a little bit if you want. We're gonna balance it, so we want to add a little bit on the left side here. We add this. Just adding some contrast in this area. Try and keep that movement. We'll add that purple right here. A little bit more. That's good. Now I'm gonna cover up some of this pink because I don't like it near the purple. Just create a little border. I'll use that lighter green. There you go. Just keep those separated, but when they're next to each other, they're not good, but when they're separated like that, it looks a little better. You get the hang of the color stuff. Just keep practicing. Sometimes you just gotta keep things separated. Now let me erase the construction lines down here. I'm gonna add a little bit of this teal green right here on this ellipse, and then right here. Okay, and then it's in the center, but let me add a little bit on this side, and then on this side. There we go. Looks really nice in this green. Okay, now let's add some white. First I want to add maybe just a smidgen of this blue. Just a smidge. Left side, right side, scrape it across. Let me erase this construction line. And let's scrape across here. Okay, and I don't want it near this purple. I want it on top of that green, the dark green of the water. So I'm just gonna scrape on this side. You can finger rub if you want, scratch it if you want. That looks good. Oh, I got some orange on there. Didn't want to do that. Part of the process. Let me just paint over that orange. Doesn't look bad, but I don't want it in there. There we go. And maybe I'll take a little bit of this pink and scratch it in. See what this starts to look like here. Yep. That looks fine. And now let's do the white, and we should be good with the water. And we'll fill in the construction lines. So just a little bit on the bottom, flat on the bottom. If you don't have this palette knife, you can always use brushes. Just if you're using a palette knife and you're scraping flat across it, it creates a different effect than brushes. So that's what I'm trying to go for. And if you see the design, you can always try and emphasize it with this white. The white is more contrasting than the blue, the light blue or the dark blue or anything like that. So we don't want it in the back because we want this to fade into nothingness. So we want the white applied near the front of the ocean here. So that's where I'm gonna put it, is probably right here. Same with any of these grays in the background. Those are pushed backwards, further back into the composition. And these lighter, the brighter colors and lighter values are pulled forward. So that's creating depth. Probably one more across should be good. And let's do it here. That looks fine. Just gonna add just a little bit of, and I think this blue is too much, maybe just a touch. Since this doesn't have that much blue, this area has a lot of blue, so I'm just gonna tone that back, paint over it a little bit. There we go. All right, probably need just a touch. I'm gonna use a brush, just a touch of this yellow. And let me erase the construction lines here. And maybe just a little yellow there. Warm it up a bit. Just a little more. Looks good. Okay, don't be afraid to mess things up. All right, let's get rid of these construction lines, and then we'll do the final process of color balancing and fine-tuning the colors. Just taking the same blue as the background and smudging it in. And you can make it thick or thin or whatever you want. Nice, looking good. And if you start to see like a solid line of this light blue, just try and mix it up, spread it out a little. Like I said, I was gonna keep this spot, but let's see. Squinting my eyes, maybe I'll keep it, but I wanna make it messier. So I'll grab this smaller end of the brush and just, well, I got rid of it, so there's that scratch in there. You can just go around and scratch certain areas, see if you like it. And if not, you can cover part of it up. Got some white there. So like this, maybe not that much, but then you can just cover up part of it, cover up part of this. Just adds to the process and the expressionistic look. This area is still a little dark compared to this. See that I didn't cover that up as much. So I'm just gonna grab some green. Want some green on this side, and then probably keep it nice and soft. Just softening it up a little bit. Here we've got this arabesque coming down. I probably just kind of want to make a mark there somehow, and we'll do that with pink. We'll just grab some pink here. Probably going to be the light reddish pink. Let's see, and I'll scratch into that, see how it looks. Keep that arabesque coming down there. That looks fine. Let's balance it. Now we can cover up that construction line. And any of these areas that I left open of the under canvas here, if I don't like that, I can just cover those up now. If I feel they're distracting from the shapes, I can just cover them up. And I think I'm gonna accentuate a couple of them. So this area, it's all right, it's all right. We'll keep part of it. Now this area, I probably wanna accentuate that with some dots of red. And then this area, I wanna accentuate. So it looks pretty cool, you know, looks a little bit better than just keeping it like that. So let me grab this, my smallest brush here, and add some dots. That looks good. And then we'll add some variation, so we'll grab some of this pink and then add some up here. Looking good so far. I can see a little bit of imbalance and a little bit of obviousness, so we'll go through and fix that. So right here, the corner of that triangle is definitely too obvious, so I'm just gonna smudge this down, make it blend in a little bit better. You can add some leaf marks. That's a little thick. Let me make this come down a little bit over here, and then we'll add just a touch of this pink maybe. Okay, and the imbalance part I was referring to is this blue right here. It's really standing out because this blue isn't enough. We gotta keep that balanced. But what I'm gonna do is actually cover some of this up instead of add more on the right side. That's better. Add some blue over here, right here. All right, let's add this area right here. Just needs a little bit of color, so maybe just a splash of yellow. We'll just balance it on this side. Looks fine. Grab some white, maybe scratch it into that. Just adding textures and interest. It's not high contrast, it's not gaining a lot of attention, but it's adding interest to that section. All right, now let's see. This still looks pretty like obvious because of these scratches, so let's make that go outward, and we're gonna accentuate it with just a little bit of red, and then we'll make it go squiggle out, kind of like this side. And then I'll add some dots to it. And up here I want to add some interest, just a little bit of low contrast interest, just some, maybe some white, maybe up here. We'll add a little bit of dark green up here, and then smudge that, smudge, mother smudger. That looks good. And then we'll add some dots of pink up there. This is all adding depth and texture, but not making it too complex. Anna. This area needs some pink, just a little accent. So we'll balance it. That line, the scratch marks are going directly out of this shape here, and I just want to kind of blend it up, mix it in a little bit better. So these areas that I left exposed from the canvas, I can cover that up. This I can blend in better, just a little bit, so it's not so obvious. Let me see if a little bit of blue would look good here. All right, so far, if we're looking down that vertical center line, we've got all the contrast pretty much balanced. Let's look again though. If we look at the contrast, we've got it pretty much balanced. I want to say maybe just a touch of contrast on this side. And since there's not a lot of this yellowish green on this side, I'll add some more right here maybe. And that might fix our fine-tune our balance better. Just gonna smudge it in. And then I'll add a couple of these reddish purple dots around it again. Maybe I can add an orange dot in the center. Let me do that. I'll add a little bit more, and then I'll add this orange dot right in the center of it. Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna add some leaf things. All right, let me add a little bit of white here. And one of those would probably look good surrounded by white. Let me grab my brush. Maybe I will expand this just a touch, this grayish pink here, and I'm gonna make it more dense. Like this is kind of showing the blue underneath. Make that more dense. And then I'll try to surround it with white. We'll see. Might have to add the red after the fact. There's a lot of paint on there, but if you use this long brush, you can apply it on there. It's just a little more difficult. All right, now I'm gonna add the red back on top of it with the small palette knife. That looks good. Can probably get rid of this white mark here, scrape that off, and then add more pink, grayish pink, and blend it out. That looks good. I'll add a little bit of red right here. Perfect. Just adding some of this intense yellow. All right, let's go color check it. Let's go around it. So the way I do that is I take my hands, and you'll see it on the screen, but it's a little bit lower for me. But I'll go around, and I want each little section to be a meal of color, like delicious, scrumptious meal of color. So that's what I'm going for. I don't want it, remember, I want to try and keep this more simple, less flowers, but more adding more textures and interest to areas, and that's where the color is going to come into play. So this section here, I'm gonna have to lower it so I can see, because the screen is a little dark, I can't really tell, but I'll show you what I'm looking at. So if I'm looking at the water, we're gonna reflect, let's just go ahead and add just a touch of color in the water. Sometimes I like to reflect the colors in the water, not like a realism type of thing, but just so it's balanced from top to bottom and adds more color variation. Let's do that a little bit here and here, and then maybe in the center down here. There we go. All right, let's go back to color. I don't know what happened there. I messed that up. This area here has a smudge. Wonder what I did there. This orange is scraped into with the red, so I'm just gonna paint on top of that. That's why this long brush comes in handy. Can go back over it pretty easy. And I'll add the red dollop again. I must have messed it up when I was painting other sections. All right, and get a little bit more. Damn it. Now I got part of it with the orange missing, so I'll go back in and fix that. There we go. Add some more. I'm gonna add a little bit more white. The wall of the white is a little knocked down. There we go. It's nice and sloppy. All right, let's go back to color checking here. This area is looking a little plain, so we'll add, maybe just add a smidgen of this green here, smidgen over here, balance it, that's fine. Well, we notice this is also plain too, so let's go for it. Just a little bit of green. Gonna add a little bit of yellow, maybe right here. So if you look in this viewfinder here, it looks pretty good there. Go over to this section, looks pretty good. I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow, so right here and right here. And make sure it's balanced. Probably add it, here's a construction line. Put it right over that. There we go. That looks good. So you can see what I'm looking at here. Looks pretty good. Come up here, that looks good. See that area? Looks pretty good. This area looks really nice. This section here, the pink, the dark grayish pink, I can add a little bit more interest there. So I'll take some pink, some of this reddish pink, and add a couple dots in there. That looks good. And we'll add some color variation up here on this as well. Cool. Let me add a couple white dots in there. Break it up a bit. Okay, now look at it. Looks a lot better, huh? All right, this area here could add a little more interest. I'll just dip my finger in here and create a little bit of texture on the edge here, some variation. So we'll do it on the other side. Just adding interest. And then you can also take your finger and smudge outwards on top of that. There we go, nice layers. Okay, let's keep going. This section here looks pretty good, but I'll add some yellow, just a couple things of yellow up there, little dots. That's good. Now let's balance it, that section. So if we look here now, it looks a little better. And let's look at this side. Need some more yellow up there. I want to keep a hierarchy. So use the 4 colors or variations, hue variations. So red, yellow, blue, and green, and then keep a hierarchy. So hierarchy is just the large, medium, small I was telling you about. We're gonna add a little bit of yellow right here, and then just a touch on the other side. There's that corner. Top looks good. Top looks good, but we can add just a smidgen of something. Maybe try this blue and add it right in the center here. Balance it from left to right, add a little interest up there, but maybe not. I think it's grabbing a little too much attention, so I'm gonna grab some of this purple and knock it back just a touch. This is all creating textures, so anything you mess up or over calculate, whatever, you can just redo it and it adds more expressionism and texture to it. All right, now let me add just a touch more. Hey, look at that texture up there, huh? It's pretty nice. Okay, let's work to the left here. I think I can add a couple blue smidges up here, smudges, and maybe on the left here. Nothing too high contrasty, remember. So that's too much contrast for me, so I'm gonna knock that section back just a touch. All right, let's look at the overall composition. Everything seems to be balanced pretty good. Now let's cut out all the colors from the palette. Just look at the composition. Looks pretty good. A lot more negative space, more simple in its center composition, but it's not symmetrical, it's asymmetrical, full of life. Looks pretty good. Looking at the water, and I want to add just a little touch of this blue maybe. Let me add this and scrape it along here, just to blend that in better. And I'm squinting, add just a touch here. That's good. And if I need to make small adjustments, I will, but usually I'll keep these handy and just tweak things if I need to later throughout the day. But all right, what do you guys think? You like the colors? You like the composition? How do you like it? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video. All your likes, comments, all that stuff helps the algorithm push this kind of stuff out to new artists and helps me out and helps me creating more content. But check out the drawing course. I've got several videos for free on this YouTube channel, and it's in a playlist, so you can check that out when you can. Also, these paintings are going to be for sale on my site if you're interested in looking at more of the compositions or actually owning one. But all that stuff helps me out, and I appreciate it so much. So I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.